Good morning. It is Wednesday, and this is Shields and Arrows, and your host, Pastor Mark Baze, is here to defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. We had the second night of the DNC. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to discuss how there are some aspects of the DNC, specifically surrounding the Obamas, that actually is pretty telling regarding many pastors and churches today. We'll get to that. We're also going to talk about some guests that the DNC had in defense of abortion, and we're going to show you how bringing on those guests, it did not actually accomplish the goal that they had. And as a matter of fact, it's pretty telling to show you that they're losing on abortion. Now, furthermore, we're going to get into a little bit of a theological discussion, how you should approach the Bible if you are completely new to it. If you had somebody asking you, I am new to the faith, or I'm at least curious about the faith, how should I start reading my Bible? I'm going to give you my thoughts because it may be a little bit different than what you've heard previously. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Great to have you. I'll remind you tonight we're going to be covering Philippians. I am working on getting all these recorded and then uploaded, so I know you've been waiting for the Philippians series to return. Please be patient. I'm going to get to it. It's going to be made available very, very soon. And as a matter of fact, you may even be getting an upload today. One of our sessions is actually probably going to have to be filmed here. So it's going to be me teaching the session right here in front of you. It's not that I'm crazy about doing it. I don't like to do it that way, but it just may need to happen. All right. So bear with me on that. I appreciate all of you taking the time to tune in as you take interest, investment in our ministry, what we're trying to do here. Okay. Now, let's talk about night number 2. So night number 2 of the DNC, it has been typical Democratic National Convention stuff. They're trying to convince Americans that they are the party of the people, trying to make it all equitable and fair, and to where those elites do not control all the wealth and then the trickle-down economics, blah, blah, blah. They had Bernie Sanders, the socialist, get up there and speak, and it's all the same spill, right? There were a few interesting things to note. So, number one, they had several different speakers come out in their big defense of abortion. Obviously, that's been a big part of Kamala's campaign, is women's rights, and by women's rights, she just means that if a woman doesn't want to have a child, then she can murder that child. Or if the man gets a woman pregnant and doesn't want to have the kid, then he can try to convince her to kill the child. But they brought on 3 different speakers. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's all quite sad, but every story that they had was very heartbreaking. And I'm not doubting the authenticity behind this story for right now. Sometimes they don't always trot out people that are the most trustworthy. Sometimes they just want to have a story. But all that being said, we're going to take these stories at face value because these are things that could happen. So, one example of a speaker up here, and then the whole point was we need abortion. It needs to be accessible. It's women's rights. It's women's health. One story, at 18 weeks, this woman went into early labor, and she nearly died after she was denied a life-saving abortion. That's according to the story. And so she goes into early labor. The hospital refuses to remove the baby because the baby wouldn't survive at 18 weeks. And so therefore she nearly died. I don't know all the story, all the details surrounding, but let's just take it at worst case scenario, okay? Here's the worst case scenario, hypothetically. Once again, I did not hear this portion of it. I'm just reporting to you what speakers were had. Worst case scenario, she went into early labor at 18 weeks. The baby perished, and they would not remove the baby from the womb because it would have certainly killed the baby. and therefore it almost caused her to die. Terrible scenario, right? Just a nightmare scenario for any parent, anybody who has experienced pregnancy. So a couple, and you're excited, waiting for the baby to come. You do have these nightmare, terrifying scenarios. Some of you may have experienced nightmare, terrifying scenarios. It's always a risk when you are bringing a child into the world. So there's that terrible scenario. Awful, sad story. The next one is that this lady had, a different lady, had some severe pain from a miscarriage, and yet they would not remove the baby from the womb, which I don't fully understand. If it's a miscarriage, then wouldn't the baby have already been lost? Regardless, they're trying to tie that into abortion care. If the infant, for example, perished in the womb, they're trying to argue that abortion care is the removal of that child. Once again, using a very, very sad story to defend the right to abortion. Then you had maybe the most obvious scenario that's used by the left: a young girl, 12 years old, abused by a stepfather and is pregnant. And that's obviously the scenario they jump to. Like, are you going to make a 12-year-old give birth as the result of sexual abuse by her stepfather? You monsters. So let's just consider all these scenarios. They're all terrible. It's all extremely sad. It's heartbreaking, gut-wrenching. Nobody would wish this upon anyone. This is what they have to do to defend abortion. I want you to understand. Look at the extremes that they are trotting out so that they can make a case for being able to kill a baby. You need to understand. They present the right to abortion, reproductive health care, all the different terms that they will use. Always try to find examples. The most worst, the most extreme of the extreme. They do it to defend the right to abortion, to protect abortion, the ability to murder a child. They are not defending for these cases. Do not be deceived. They do not want the right to abortion so that they can try to address a 12-year-old girl. That's not why they want the right to abortion. They're using it in a way to defend the right to it, but that's not the reason. And you know why? Because if let's say hypothetically, the Republican-controlled House of Congress pass a law that codifies rights for only the instances of sexual abuse on a child or an adult, sexually abused or life-threatening, standing to abortion illegal. In those cases, the left would not be in favor of that bill. But isn't this everything you protecting these young women, those who are having terrible complications in pregnancy? So what's the issue? If reveal the demand, because for them, abortion is not about protecting women. Even though they use that word protect, and then there's some people who are conservative, but when they bring up these extreme scenarios, they kind of get a little bit confused on morality and don't realize that ending a life is ending a life no matter what. Regardless of a terrible circumstance, you'll find people who kind of get, some moral confusion. But when you press them on the matter, they will not. They will not agree to only the extremes of these fringe circumstances. The old adage of, Hillary Clinton's safe, legal, and rare, that is not the Democrat platform. Safe, legal, and rare is long gone. It is abortion on demand. That is the party platform. So when they trot out these people in an effort to make people sympathetic to abortion and say, oh, how terrible it is that Donald Trump and conservatives want to force young 12-year-old girls to give birth to their abuser's child, they are being dishonest. It's disingenuous. What they are really vying for is abortion as a means of birth control. They want to be able to kill babies on demand. If the mother's perfectly healthy, if the baby's perfectly healthy, or if the couple, they got caught up in the moment, did things that sometimes people will do when they're caught up in the moment, and now as a result you have a child. They could even be a married couple, but maybe they're just not quite ready. They were saving up for a new house, or they were saving up for a new car. They had a trip planned. They were going to go to Europe this summer. Can't cut in on the trip to Europe. That's the abortions that they want. So do not buy into the lie that they want abortions so they can address these horrible, heartbreaking scenarios. They want abortion so they can kill babies at will whenever they want. That is exactly the Democratic platform. All right, make no mistake. So they trotted out, and that just goes to show you that they're losing on the abortion issue. If you have to go to the extremes, then it shows that you are losing. Okay. If you got to go to the fringe of a problem, if you've got to go to the fringe of your platform and use the most extreme cases, then you are losing. And that's exactly what they're showing. So don't buy into it. The abortion argument is a very weak argument for the Democrats. And even though on some of those extremes you can find even people who overall don't like third-term abortions, third trimester abortions, that they may struggle a little bit on some moral confusion when it gets to those very, very hard scenarios. It's not a good platform for them. They're extremely weak on it, and by having to use these extreme examples to try to build their case, they're revealing how weak they really are. They really, truly are. All right, so there was that portion of the DNC trying to make their appeal to a disingenuine, misleading appeal for abortion. And by the way, I think there's been some 25 babies murdered at the DNC because Planned Parenthood had a bus and they're, murdering children there. Now, with that, they also had the Obamas, and the Obamas have not lost their favor. They are treated as the royalty of the DNC. Barack Obama is the second coming of Christ. Some would maybe argue the Antichrist. But Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, they both spoke. Michelle Obama, if you go to any of the big mainstream media, MSNBC, whatnot, they're going to be praising Michelle Obama. She was everything that you would hope for, and I'm sure that the Democrats are actually very upset that she's not running for president as opposed to Kamala Harris. The truth about the Obamas, when you look at substance, when you look at their actual platform, they are just Joe Biden. Joe Biden is actually not even Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Barack Obama, but Joe Biden did not have the spit and polish, the slick presentation, the oratorical skill, the mastering of rhetoric. Joe Biden is when you take away, you remove the mask off of Barack Obama, Joe Biden's presidency that's all it is. The Democrats would like to pretend like Barack Obama ushered in a golden age in America. And if Trump would not have won in 2016, we would be living in the great new age. And the truth is, the worst thing, and I will say this, and I will defend it, and I don't care who digs this up in years to come. The truth is, the worst thing that America ever did for race relations is elect Barack Obama. Because Barack Obama in 2008 ran as a great unifier. I'm young enough to remember some of that. He spoke with this great unifying, together we can. He was a great master at controlling the crowds, telling people what they wanted to hear, and the masses just fell for it. When he got into office, he implemented a bunch of bad policies, Obamacare, bad foreign relations, you name it. And people did not like his policies. Obama in practice was not as good as Obama in theory. Well, what did Obama do to win his second election? He couldn't run on his policies. His policies were not good. He lost votes. Barack Obama lost votes from 2008 to 2012, even though I was just a junior high school kid at that time. But Obama lost votes because he had bad policies. How did Obama win the second term? On sheer merit of his candidacy, he should not have won. He did not earn a right to have a second term. He won by dividing the country on race. 2008, Obama ran as the unifier, right? You know the big line, no blue states, no red states, just United States. In 2012, he flipped it. And then he said, no, America's racist. That, who was it? Michael Brown? And there was maybe one other. He turned to them, and then you had all the, police officers hunting down, shooting young black men. That was the narrative. And he formed a coalition based on race and racial segregation, disunity. And in doing so, he took race relations in America back decades. Decades. And this is true because, this is absolutely true because here's the reality. The best way to tell it is in Hollywood, in movies. Bear with me for a second. If you went back to the days of, let's say, for example, you watched just any, you could take any given Hollywood movie. Jurassic Park. I'm just going to use that for example. Jurassic Park. You had, was it Samuel L. Jackson in Jurassic Park? There's Samuel L. Jackson. I don't know how you feel about him, but he's, kind of an iconic actor. He's got a very distinct voice, a very distinct persona. Okay, he was a character in Jurassic Park. You had Blade. I don't know if y'all seen it. I don't know if I've ever even watched the whole thing. But Blade was a superhero. Actually, one of the first big Marvel superhero movies. Blade was played by, I can't remember, but he a black actor. Pretty popular, well-known actor, well-liked by many people. Blade. What is the actor's name? Wesley Snipes. Yeah, well-known, well-liked actor. I don't know as far as politics, but everybody seemed to like him. Blade was a well-liked movie for the most part by a lot of people. That was all the way back in 1998. Okay? You had a black-led superhero movie in 1998, and people just watched it. After Obama, you have in 2018, is it? Black Panther? And they're treating it like it's the first ever black superhero movie. Oh my goodness, we have a black superhero. This is a big deal. Black Panther, oh my goodness. This is going to heal the country. Finally, after all this time, we've got a black actor playing a superhero, and it's focused on that. We already had Wesley Snipes playing Blade. We had black actors playing a movie. What was the one? Mel Gibson and who was it? Lethal Weapon. We had Danny Glover playing in the Old West, and it did not feel forced. Those older movies did not feel like it was being thrown in your face. Here's a great one. Predator. Let's look at the cast for Predator on IMDb. Okay. Let me try to get this silly sponsor out of the way. So here is Predator. Predator was made in what, 1987. Okay, 1987. Here's your cast: Arnold Schwarzenegger. Jumped down on me a little bit. Carl Weathers. You had Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Sonny Landham, Richard. I mean, you had. I mean, that's a pretty diverse cast. Actors from about every background. And you know what? Nobody cared. Because you know what they all were? They were all a bunch of big, buff Hollywood action movie stars. And we did not care what their background was because the movie did not care. The movie didn't make a deal about it. Nobody cared because of the story. Hollywood movies, post Barack Obama, all of a sudden said, you know what? Race is the most important thing. So we're not going to care about good characters. We're not going to care about good stories. We're just going to shove the racial message in your face. And you know what? Nobody likes these modern movies. All our favorite movies are older because that's back when people cared about stories. And we didn't care if Carl Weathers was black or not. We just cared that he's Apollo Creed. The man looked like one of the funny things about Rocky is honestly believing that Rocky could beat Apollo Creed because Sylvester Stallone, he was in shape. But did you see Carl Weathers? Like, he looked like he could have performed in a bodybuilding competition. But my point in saying all this is the Obamas are trotted out as the greatest politicians to have ever graced America, like the greatest family ever, treated truly as the great unifiers and everything. As I'm looking, I'm seeing our sign flashing here. There we go. We've reconnected now. But you know, the Obamas are treated as, you know, the greatest people to ever live in America. But the truth is, if you look at their policies, if you look at their messaging, it is just the same old Democrat, socialist, disunifying agenda. So why are the Obamas so popular? Why is Barack Obama treated as this great leader and really appeals to a lot of people, okay, on both sides of kind of the, well, not necessarily on both sides, because a lot of conservatives realize Obama for what he is. but does tend to maybe reach some of those independents and moderates better than somebody like Joe Biden does. Because the policies are the same. Joe Biden's presidency was just Obama's third term. The truth is, people like politicians and just any kind of figure that presents themselves as kind, compassionate, says the right thing, speaks in the right way. They make you feel good. Obama made you feel good. You felt good about voting for him because he would have been the first black president. He spoke so well and eloquent, even though sometimes he would kind of go to certain areas during his campaign speeches and he would start talking a little bit differently, like Hillary and Kamala did. Even though the whole time Obama pretending like he's a common man, just one of y'all. But he's an elite like the rest. He's a millionaire. Michelle Obama signed like a $65 million book deal. This is because society, the reason why Obama is such a success, and all the liberals, they cannot get enough of him. Society would rather someone lie to them but speak nicely, present themselves as slick, smooth, so passionate, so caring. They would rather have that person than somebody be blunt and just brutally honest. That's what they would want. They would rather have a facade of niceness than somebody who is just brutally honest and tells them like it is. That's why people don't like Trump. Now, I know the media say Trump lies all the time. Trump is a great exaggerator. The truth is, though, behind Trump sometimes exaggerations. When he says, for example, we have, I don't know, let's just say, for example, that we're leading in all the polls. Now, polls kind of have shifted, but, he would say, we're leading by a lot. We're leading Joe, and then, Kamala for a little while. We're leading Kamala by a lot. He was leading. Now, he said a lot. How much is a lot? Is 2 points a lot? I mean, if you're a Republican and you're leading by 2 points nationally, that's a lot for a Republican. Trump is an exaggerator sometimes. But behind Trump's statements, though, there's that fundamental truth. Joe Biden has been saying that Trump was calling Nazis fine people. That's not true. It's a lie, and it's been a lie this whole time. They say that Trump is a convicted felon. Okay, sure, maybe you have a kernel of truth there, but who's the one doing the convictions? Are the courts truly unbiased? Or Biden will say if Trump's elected, he will weaponize the DOJ and turn the FBI into his own personal police. Oh, really? Like nobody's done that recently, used the FBI to, raid the home of their political rival? The reason why people like Obama is because he's slick and smooth and says what they want him to say, look the way they want him to look. They don't like Trump because Trump is brutally honest and tells you like it is. We should not be opening up our borders to these awful countries that are sending their very worst. People don't like it because it's not nice. Or, if you don't pay your fair share, NATO, then we can just tell Putin to march in and do whatever he wants. That is brutal honesty. It's calling them out. It's telling them that you better pay up. That's what it is. Now, as far as like the Putin marching in and taking Europe, that's called tactics. That is called Trump doing his own negotiating. But it's brutal honesty, though, calling them out, saying you're not holding up your end of the deal. And if you're not going to hold up at the end of the deal, why should we even be involved? What are we getting out of NATO? You're draining our resources. You need us. We do not need you. But people don't like Trump because he says mean things. But you know what? Sometimes the mean things are also the true things. And this is where we fundamentally misunderstand kindness and caring versus just being nice. Obama says a lot of vicious and nasty things, but sometimes you can be mistaken for thinking that he's nice. Niceness is not the same thing as caring and not genuine kindness. Genuine kindness is being willing to tell somebody the hard truth, even if it may hurt. That's true kindness. Being genuinely honest. The truth hurts sometimes. If you are, let's just practice an example of it. If you are somebody who wastes your day sitting in a couch or on a couch in a chair, I don't know why you sit on a couch versus sitting in a chair. I digress. If you spend all your day sitting there looking at a screen, looking at a TV, looking on your phone, and not getting up and being active, having a hobby, going on a walk, tending a garden, doing something, then you're basically just sentencing yourself to an early death. You've got to get up and be active, otherwise you're going to get unhealthy and die. Now that is not very nice, is it? It's not a nice thing to say. That is brutal. But it's also brutally honest. And sometimes it takes that cold glass of brutal honesty in your face. And somebody sometimes has to care enough about you to be brutally honest. Sometimes fathers have to play that role. They've got to be brutally honest. I'll tell you one of my flaws. I can be forgetful. I can forget things pretty easily. And there's been times my father-in-law has said, you cannot remember things. That's pretty brutal honesty. I mean, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He says, you cannot remember things. You got to start writing stuff down. So you know what I did? I had to get a notebook and start writing stuff down because there's a lot of things I got to take care of around here. And my mom, she's watching, she can probably testify that you have trouble remembering things. Brutal honesty, even if it hurts, is actually kinder than niceness. That's the title of our show today. Brutal honesty is kinder than niceness. People want from their politicians niceness. They want them to be nice. The reason why they like Kamala, Kamala seems so nice. Trump just seems so mean. He just says the most just meanest things. He calls the people coming across the border criminals. That's mean. That's not nice. Kamala Harris says they're undocumented immigrants. That's nice. That's such a nice thing to say. Even though we have laws, and our laws say you're not allowed to just enter our country without the documentation, without the legal means of doing so. So you can have niceness, and we'll see where that gets you, or you can be honest about the matter. The reason why people like Trump is because he's brutally honest. He speaks plainly. And he doesn't speak in that flowery, sugar-coated tongue of Barack Obama. Barack Obama would give you the most rose-framed oratory presentation, and it's all full of empty promises or misleading statements. No matter how nice you say something, if you are untruthful, then that is not kindness. And no matter how gruff and rough and blunt you may say something, as long as it is genuinely true and it is for the well-being of somebody or a country, that is actual kindness. And we have misunderstood that. We've misunderstood it. Now, how does that tie into pastors today? People want their pastors to be nice. That's what they want. They want the pastor to get up there and they want him to just be loving, kind in their estimates, and compassionate and sympathetic and understanding and just so easing, just to put them at ease. And that's why you get two categories of preachers nowadays. You will have some preachers who kind of present themselves as if they are honest, even if the truth hurts. I think David Platt's a good example because he will, his big spiel is, why aren't you more like Jesus and marching with Black Lives Matter and whatnot. But his big spiel is, if we truly love Jesus, we've got to go. We've got to go on missions. If you truly love Jesus, if you truly care about the gospel, you'll give. You got to do it. So he kind of, acts like he's, kind of being brutally honest, but it's through the frame of like a pleading and a begging, like just out of like such deep compassion. If you're truly a believer, you've got to come to church. You can't neglect the gathering together. God Almighty has declared it. So you've got to be a member. And you've got to start giving. But don't ask to look at the books. Books are secret. That's kind of an inside joke that you can read about. But that's one way. Pastors that are whiny, that are not intimidating at all. They're even, kind of maybe soft-spoken, feminine to a degree. They have a really pleading, desperate voice. That's category number one. A lot of churches have those. A lot in Oklahoma. There's the other one, though. Let me give you the other one. The other one's the big jolly fellow. That they may be kind of loud. They may talk in a loud voice when they get to preaching. Of course, in Oklahoma, they may have the really, really pronounced, oaky voice. I know that I went to college. My family sometimes points this out, that I don't really sound quite as thick as what I once did. Maybe that's true. I think it's just because you start reading words and you start trying to enunciate them. But when I'm not doing my show, I probably fall into a much more just, hick sounding voice. But I try to speak my words clearly when I'm talking to you. But you get the big jolly fellows. And man, they love the Lord. Lord's so good. Good, man, y'all. Jesus loves you. Y'all need to read that Bible. Read that Bible. I tell you what, there ain't no joy like there's joy in Jesus. Amen. And they're just big, jolly fellows. I tell y'all what, y'all are looking out there for happiness and purpose and meaning in your life, and you're going to look all over the world, and you're going to find all these different things to distract you from the one true joy. That's Jesus. They're good old boys. They're good guys. They probably support Trump. They love their wives. They love their families. They'll raise their kids, and their kids will be, probably decent contributing members of society. But that is, once again, just nice. They're nice, big old jolly fellas. Sometimes they literally are big. They're not quite feminine. They're not wearing the tight, skinny jeans, and they're not talking in the whiny voice. You got to love Jesus. You got to be a member of our church. They'll talk in that big, loud voice. Y'all come to church now, you hear? And that's what people want. They want one of the two. The more urban, city-type people, they'll gravitate towards more of the soft-spoken, effeminate type preachers that have more of a whiny, pleading, begging voice. And then, on the other hand, if you get more into the country churches, you get the big jolly fellows. And in both cases, they lack a lot of brutal honesty. And they lack a lot of brutal honesty because they never dig into the Bible and they never say anything very controversial. They will not step far outside of the accepted lines. They will repeat and regurgitate the same old stuff that they've heard from preacher after preacher, commentary after commentary, and they never will look at any serious matters of doctrine. They will not touch on eschatology. They're not going to talk on why Jesus' teachings sometimes sound very peculiar for our age of grace. They'll never address why the Lord's Prayer doesn't really sound like it should align with us today. They won't tackle challenging topics such as what is the kingdom of heaven? Why in some places does it say faith and works, like with James, but then Paul seems to really emphasize just faith alone? Why does Peter talk about baptism in Acts 2, and even in his own epistles, baptism now saves you? They're never going to tackle it because they're just focused on being nice and just not causing conflict. They want to just be so agreeable, and that's what we're left with. And that's what people want out of their preachers. They do not want a preacher that has a backbone. They don't want a preacher who's willing to speak out on something and tell it like it is. They just want their preacher to give them the warm fuzzies on Sunday, and then they can go throughout their week, and they can feel good, and then they can go back to church on the next Sunday, and they can get more warm fuzzies, and everything's just warm and fuzzy. And that preacher's so nice. Oh man, that preacher's such a nice guy. I'm telling you, he's so compassionate. He's so sweet. We don't like that one preacher though. Did you hear that one guy? He was talking about how you people need to care about what Bible you're using. How some of these Bible translations aren't as good. How dare he? My mama got me my NIV. I love my NIV. God talks to me through my NIV, and yet that preacher over there is telling me that Bible's not as good. How dare him? He's so mean. That's not nice. He's just trying to cause division. He's just trying to cause people to be fighting amongst each other. We don't need all that fighting. We should be fighting about Bible translations. He's over here talking about how preachers need to be careful about trying to apply the Sermon on the Mount today. That's Jesus. That's the words in red. That's not a nice man. That's a mean old preacher. Says things I don't like. It hurts my feelings. He's just trying to cause, he's causing strife. Causing strife. Paul would rebuke him. Paul would rebuke him for trying to cause division in the body of Christ. Shame on him. Shame on him. When you go back to our other preacher, he just talks about, man, y'all just need to love people. Y'all need to be patient with people. All right. I'll take a short break while I digress here. I'll look a bit at your comments, and then we'll go into our final segment of the day. Yeah, Rick, that's what we're seeing all the more from people. That's the main platform for the Democrats when it comes to abortion. Ken says, get Obama off the teleprompter, and he could barely put two fluid sentences together, O's and O's. Yeah, I think that's probably true. He can do a little bit better off script, but than like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But yeah, I think he definitely needs to be well organized and put together. I think that's true. Unlike Trump, who can just go with it. Toby, I keep seeing that. Somebody's saying that RFK Jr. may drop out and support Trump. That I don't know. I don't see it. I feel like he's going to stick it out to the very, very end, but maybe. I don't know. Ken says, does it sound like Satan, Robert? I guess that was from then. All right. So we'll see how all of that plays out as far as the election goes. It'll be interesting to see. I do think that Trump is. I think he's going to fight, till the very end. Now, there is one interesting thing I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can get logged in and show you really quickly. Elon Musk, for what it's worth, did a poll on X. Now, obviously, Elon Musk has come out, supported Trump. He's going to be supported by more right-wing people, but Musk is followed by a lot of people. And let's see here. Where is it? Okay. So Musk is doing a poll right now on X. It's quite amusing to me. And here is the current polling. So Elon Musk is doing a poll right now on X for Trump versus Kamala. There have been 4,846,062 votes. Trump is currently leading 73.9%. Now, how much can we really count on that as any accurate reflection? I think that we'd probably agree Musk is going to be slanted to the right. He's going to have more people following him that are conservative than probably not. But Musk is followed by a lot of people. I mean, if you go over to Musk's page here, I mean, how many followers does he have? He has 195.3 million followers. That's a lot. That's a lot of followers. I don't know. Do you have more confidence in Musk's polling, though, than on our actual election? That's what's kind of sad. I feel like we may actually be more interested in we may have more confidence in Musk's poll on Twitter or X than we actually do in our actual elections. That's interesting to me. Okay, so I want to speak about this really quickly. We oftentimes, have people who are wanting to start reading their Bible. Maybe you have a young kid, or you have somebody who's new to the faith, and they're wanting to get your thoughts on where should I start? How should I read the Bible? We've often said start in the New Testament. How often have you heard that? Start in the New Testament. Start in Matthew and go from there. That's kind of what I did. I started reading the New Testament first because that's just kind of what I was told. And obviously you who watch understand that is potentially problematic. We need to be careful. I think we need to give them context. I would tell them that it's difficult, but I would rather somebody actually have a good general understanding of the Bible instead of just jumping right into the middle of it. And that's hard. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to deal with. But I think jumping into the New Testament without any context is cause for confusion. I would say maybe even if you start with Paul, just say, all right, read the book of Ephesians. Read the book of Romans. We so often hear that, start there, read the gospel message. I think if we are going to explain to people how to approach their Bible, you cannot start just in the middle of it. Now, you would want them to hear the gospel presentation. I think that you can give the gospel presentation in short order, but when it comes to their actual own reading of the Bible, I think you have to start actually kind of back in the Old Testament to get some things established. I don't know that reading the Bible cover to cover is the best way for any beginner to start, because that's a very difficult task. But I think we need to start getting people to understand that you need to read. You need to read the first 3 chapters of Genesis. Read the first 3. You've got to get an understanding of where the Bible begins. And then from there, we need to encourage them to read some of the major points. Read some of the highlights. So once you get Genesis chapters 1 through 3 down, you should jump to, and this gets tough because we could say so much, but you got to give it something to where they can process it. Give them Genesis 12. Read that part with Abraham and see what God promised him, what God implemented and put in place with Abraham. Because if you do not understand the covenant promise that God made with Abraham and his descendants, you are going to be confused when you try to jump into the rest of the Old Testament or even the New. You have to understand that God, before he started dealing with men on an individual level, obviously post-Abraham, God dwelt with just men in general before Abraham. But post God's dealing with Abraham, it was focused on the descendants of Abraham, the people of Israel. They need to understand that the Bible is not just some broad, general book that you can pick up in any passage and just start making application in a spiritual sense. You have to understand who's being addressed. So you need to get them to understand that this book of the Old Testament is really focused on the descendants. After Genesis chapter 11, the focus is on a guy named Abram, whose name will be changed to Abraham, and his followers, those who followed after him, his descendants, his offspring, his children, the people of Israel. And they were promised things, very specific things. And as you progress forward, God revealed the things that he would do for them, set up a kingdom for them, and that they would be they would be his people, he would be their God, he would bless them. You have to establish those things. You have to put those things in place because you need the proper framing when you get to the New Testament. And you'll understand that when Paul comes on the scene and starts preaching a salvation message that does not include the Israel law or the covenant promises, but is the hope of eternal life, reconciliation by grace through faith, then they're going to understand the proper context. You've got to frame the Bible to make it to where it's actually able to be digested, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You cannot just start trying to swallow the leg. You cannot do it. It's too much. But you've got to provide the actual guidelines, the framework to know where you're going. And truth be told, you don't even have to teach them right division. I think that if you give them the understandings of where the Bible starts and then how it progresses, then they can probably get a pretty good idea of what's going on by the time you've given them the background. So it does require a little bit more work. It's not as easy as just saying, read the New Testament, or just start in Genesis and move forward. I would honestly say maybe it's even better to tell them to start in Genesis and go forward than just say start in the Gospels. Because the Gospels do not just happen on their own. You know, the Gideons, I have a lot of respect for them in some ways because they do understand the importance of getting Bibles out there. But in order to save money, what do? They print the little New Testaments. It is problematic because the New Testament is not all you need to know. You've got to have the other 39 books. And so I think that if we're going to talk about this matter of reading the Bible and where should you start, this whole start in the Gospel, start in Matthew going forward, it's going to cause people the wrong impression because they're going to start without ever having the groundwork. Genesis through Malachi builds up to Matthew. And the truth is, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is tied to the Old Testament. It's not until you get to the book of Acts when you start to see things change, when Paul has his ministry, his revelation. So I would encourage us, as we're starting to try to communicate this matter of reading your Bible, you've got to start with understanding where the Bible begins before you can just jump into the New Testament. I think that's been some very harmful instruction. All right. With that, I'll read a few more comments and I'll let you go. We're at 56 minutes now. Ken Hammer says, amen on the man man pastor with a backbone. Yeah, that's what we need. Oh, Nancy says, Mark, I want to hear a Gomer Pyle imitation from you. Oh, goodness. I don't know if I can get my voice to do that. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Trying to think of something that Gomer would even say. I don't think I could do it. It'd be bad. You got to get it kind of nasally. You got to get that voice up there. I don't know how to do it. I would not do a good job. Private Pyle. Reporting for duty. I don't know. That's terrible. That's terrible. Nancy also says you have to have a foundation to build on. You can't just start reading the New Testament and have any understanding. Yep, that's it. That's it. We got to start getting that word out there to help people understand. And I'm gonna give a slight delay just so Nancy gets the opportunity to hear my my impressions, so she can tell me whether or not she liked it. Let's see, who else do we have on today? Kristen's on today. Glad that Kristen gets to listen with her new job. I appreciate her making the time to do that. Myra's on. Good morning, Myra. Hey, Madison's on. Madison, I hope that you're getting some sleep. Those first few weeks bringing a new baby home is rough. If there's triplets, it's times 3. All right. Well, maybe Nancy has not heard my impression yet, or she's just so stunned, or if you can't say anything nice, don't say nothing at all. Maybe I should try to stick to my Trump impersonations. Quite frankly, I find it harder to do a Gomer Pyle voice than a Donald Trump voice. But maybe my Trump's not very good either. All right, I think I'm rambling now. We're at 59 minutes here. I will send you all on your way. I'll remind you, Dr. White is not doing Ask the Theologian today. He will be back to his Wednesday night, though, Bible study. And then next week, is it next week? Yes, it is. I will not be doing a Friday morning show, okay? So I'll be with you Monday through Thursday, but I will not be with you Friday because I'm going to be getting ready to go to Branson that day. Also, let's see here. That's all I got for you. All right, so with that, this has been Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I hope that you can take the time to check out our Last Day series. Be sure to share that, let people know. We're going to be continuing to work on that, providing more content for you. And with that, thank you all so much. We will see you tomorrow for Theology Thursday.